Welcome back to the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Fitting. I'm very excited for my guest today. She's another good friend of mine, and her specialty is Ayurveda, although she has many other specialties as a health coach, Ayurvedic health practitioner, goal setting, stress management, all kinds of things. So I'll let her introduce herself and her background, but we're going to dive into the sister science of yoga, the sister science of Thai massage. So, those are two of my favorite things. And we're going to dive into Ayurveda today and how to set yourself up for the new year and really start taking care of yourself in a seasonal way, as well as planning some goals and doing some other things. So thank you, Ellen, for coming on to the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about things that I love and am excited to share with other people. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to leak all my nerdiness onto you and your listeners.
Yes, and we love that. So we will totally do that today. So I really like to start with everybody kind of just a little bit of summary of your journey into holistic practices, into Ayurveda. I know you studied at Kripalu and other places. So just kind of tell me what led you to discovering different holistic practices, Ayurveda, anything you want to share with the audience.
Yeah, so I've always been a huge nerd, sometimes to my detriment, but nerds are cool now. According to the Big Bang Theory, they are like, we're back in. But no, I was always a huge nerd, and I went into science because that's what I was good at. And so I was a scientist, studying very nerdy things, renal physiology and developmental hematopoiesis, which nobody cares what that is. Anyway,
I don't even know what that is.
It's good. We're just moving on. We're just gonna like power through that. And I was doing these things because I was just good at them. For no other reason. Like I was like, oh, well, this is just, I'm good at this. And it never occurred to me that I could be anything else. And then when I stopped and thought, I was like, oh, like, like literally like 10 years into my career, I was like, oh, I could do whatever I wanted. It was so weird. And so then I started doing yoga teacher training, which led me to Ayurveda. And what I loved about Ayurveda was the intersection of science and holistic wellness, that this idea that I am much more than Ellen whose back hurts, and Ellen who has a sore throat, Ellen who sometimes gets migraines. I'm this whole being. And so Ayurveda really resonated with me. And so then I went to study at Kripalu for a long time. And I've studied with some of the leaders in the field across the country, and I really love that. At the same time, I was getting my master's in adult education so that I could learn how to, because as a nerd, I wanted to know the right way to share things with people. So I learned how adults learn and what motivates us to change. And that led me to becoming a health coach. So I do that as well. So you get all these things. I also have a expertise in stress management. I go into businesses and help them manage stress. So I do a lot of stuff. I teach at IUPUI. I teach health coaching there, and I teach stress management there as well. And so it's all kind of evolved into, I'm so lucky that my whole life is literally all these things that I love and getting to share those with people. Like that's what I do for a living.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I have I've created that same life for myself. So I really can appreciate that. And it's amazing. It's like really amazing when you think about it. So, and I'm glad that you can share all of that because you're really wonderful, and you've been part of our teacher training before. Mm-hmm. And the way I think you share Ayurveda and health coaching in general, it just makes it down to earth for people, because it can be very an esoteric concept if you get really deep into it, and you put it in very easy to understand, easy to do ways.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, or saying that, because for me, like, there's all these things out there, and I feel like I, at least, and so many of my clients are so overwhelmed with all the stuff that we're told about, and all the things that people are like, oh, you should totally try this, and we should be doing that. And that word should, I feel like it's such a bad word. I feel like it's a 4-letter word, like the F word, like we will not say on this PG podcast. But and so for me, it was like, oh, how do you use all these things to almost like hack your life, which I think is a little reductive, but you know, how do you use these things to really have the life that you want, and not an all or nothing kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, when I approach, when I break it down for clients, and anytime I teach, it's, how is this actually useful to you? What do you care what Cherika wrote about in his text 5,000 years ago? I mean, you might. That's great. We can certainly talk about that. But what you actually care is how it applies to your life, and
Mm-hmm.
how it can make your life better, and what are some ideas that can help you with that. And so that's certainly how I try to help people apply these things in a life, or in their life, that in a way that's meaningful and useful to them. That's how I approach everything.
And I think you do a wonderful job at that.
Thank
So,
you.
well, so let's take a real it back just a little bit and explain to our audience, which is worldwide. So, talking about what is Ayurveda in general. A lot of people don't even know what that is. I mean, even when people get trained in yoga or they're just taking classes, and we've experienced it in trying to host workshops and stuff, people, there's such a disconnection from any relationship to yoga. People don't know what it is. So maybe just explaining what it is, how it
Yeah.
relates.
So Ayurveda actually translates to the science of life. And if I could make it its simplest explanation, which hopefully none of my teachers ever hear this, but it's basically what they've had in India for medicine for the past 5,000 years. So like Western medicine is relatively new in the world, and so that's what they've been doing all this time, to help keep them healthy and fix disease, and that's pretty much the simplest explanation I can give. But of course, it's like yoga, it's a lifelong study. You can really dive deep into really every aspect of your health and wellness. But what it offers for me, how I think about Ayurveda, is it's a guidebook for living my best life. It gives me just tools and ideas about things I can try, and how I evolve over time, right? Because what worked for me in my 20s is not working for me in my 40s. That is like a very different situation. And that will also not work for me when I'm in my 80s. So, how do I evolve over time and understand that I'm constantly changing? And you mentioned stuff about the season earlier. So, seasons influence how I experience my health, as does time of day, as does what's going on. Like, everything impacts my health, and Ayurveda really encompasses that for me. It lets me know that I'm this whole person. I'm not just this set of experiences or this thing that's going wrong with me. Everything that I do and encounter impacts my health. And what's so interesting about that, because I feel like in Western medicine, which I still use, I'm not down on Western med. I mean, they help me with strep throat. I'm not going to tackle that with some herbs and stuff. So they hook me up. But it's really like, here's what's wrong with you, and here's some ideas to fix it. But Ayurveda is more like, you're this whole person, and not only what you ate and your lifestyle affect what's going on with your health, but who you're friends with, who you talk to today. Like that episode of Game of Thrones that you watched, that's got to be processed somehow. Everything that in your environment, your thoughts, your feelings, everything impacts your health and wellness. And how do you start to think of it like that, instead of just like, oh, I didn't have enough kale today, or I shouldn't have had that much bacon, or, you know, like that's such a reductive approach to my health, that I wanted something more robust, and Ayurveda offers that.
So, and I completely agree, because I weave that into my own self practices, working with clients, and the Eastern approach of medicine, whether it's Indian medicine of Ayurveda, or it's Chinese medicine or Thai medicine, like that holistic approach with a WH, like whole person approach, is a huge mindset shift. And I think it's very helpful when we start looking at everything and how everything applies. Would you share, because a lot of people have little tidbits of Ayurveda and they know the elemental theory, or they may not know, but relation to the elements, relation to the doshas, and kind of explain that. I know that's just the basics, and you can go down Ayurveda rabbit holes, but just maybe sharing a little bit about that.
So I'll share that as quickly as I can, but really that's like the deep dive into Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is a 5 elemental system, meaning that 5,000 years ago, how are you going to explain things, right? Like you don't know how a heart works. You don't know why the wind is there. Like you have to make up an understanding of that. And so the basis of Ayurveda is 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And so if you think of everything in the world has all of those elements in there. So like the ground obviously has more earth, but it certainly has all those other elements. The air around us right now has all of those elements, but certainly more ether and air, but there's stuff floating around in there. There's water in there. There's some heat in here, which is good because it's winter. And all of those energies, these ideas of the elements play into how they started to kind of frame their mind around how people behave and how things manifest. So they gave names of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha to explain the energies that are around us. So Vata is those elements of ether and air. Pitta is fire and water. Kapha is earth and water. And so if you kind of think of how those elements might be in a person. So a Vata person, if they're made up primarily of ether and air, which does not mean that they're like a ghost. That means that
Thank you for clarifying.
They're still, I just want to, yeah, we're not getting that as woo-woo. Like we're, but, so I my favorite example of a classic Vata person is Phoebe from Friends. Like she's like very creative, she's very well spoken, she has all these great ideas, but she's also kind of like distracted by shiny objects and you never really know what's going on with her. Like she's a lot of movement, she's always doing something. And so that would be a Vata individual. A Pitta individual is like somebody who loves to learn and somebody who like has that fire, that passion in them. They really want to know things and plan things and organize things. I am definitely a Pitta person. And what's funny is Pitta out of balance. You could experience my imbalances if you were to not feed me. That would lead to some hangry moments.
I am totally a Pitta dominant. I can totally relate.
It would be a situation. It's got a nickname in our household, but
hangriness has made me yell the F word on the corner in Bloomington many times because I was like, I'm hungry, make a decision. Yeah. So yes,
we need to eat now.
It's a real thing.
And it needs to happen. But, that's the fire in me being out of balance. And that makes sense to me. Whether or not, like, that's really true, it makes sense. Like, it's something I can explain about myself. But I like to imagine the classic Pitta person is like, I always think of, like, Martha Stewart. Because she's really organized, but I could totally see her losing it. Like, and that it would be, like, a wrath of God situation. Like just like fire might come out of her mouth. I don't know. Like I feel like she's got it really together
behind the scees.
But like when things, I don't know. And that's not a judgment because I can do the exact same thing. But
I can too. I get it.
And then
that's my favorite discussion because you're like, I understand you because I have that same issue.
Because sometimes I'm angry too.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then Kapha dosha is that earth and water. And so it's like your totally chill friend who doesn't seem like really fazed by anything. They're like, okay, cool. And my classic example is Santa. So Santa is just like,
I love your examples.
I feel like he's got like one night a year where he's freaking out, but the rest of the time he's like really chill. He's like, what's up? Let's make some toys. Let's make our naughty and nice list. Like, so he's full of love. He's got that bowl full of jelly for stomach. Anyway, so those are my examples of the energy. And that's really the foundation of of Ayurveda, but how I prefer to approach it is the basic concept in Ayurveda of like increases like and opposites balance. So if you leave with anything from this podcast, remember, like increases like and opposite balance, which means, let's take our hangry example.
Oh.
So when you're not feeding me, I'm getting more frustrated, I'm getting more angry. It builds on itself. That creates more anger, more frustration, and it's kind of this perpetual motion kind of situation that moves me forward into what can lead to the F word and other things. You know, a more classic example might be hot versus cold. If you think of opposites balancing, it is cold outside right now, so we are not wandering around in shorts. I'm not really craving like cold iced tea. I'm thinking more about like, okay, how can I be warm to balance out that cold? But also, I do warming practices in my life without even thinking about it. So like I'm more apt to like hold my cup of tea and pause there and be like, oh, this is so nice. Or to snuggle with my cats. I mean, I feel like I snuggle with them in the summer too. I'm not like a neglecting cat parent. But you know, I crave them more in the winter because I'm like, oh, you're warm. I would like to seek that out and bring that near me. And so we naturally do these things that seek out opposites to find balance, because Ayurveda is all about how do you balance out those energies, those elements I mentioned earlier. If you have too much of one thing, what do you do to balance and find more harmony so that you don't have too much or too little of anything? You're just kind of right down the middle.
Well, that's a great explanation. So I hope all our listeners will leave with that. But we've got some more things that I know in store. And Ellen is going to provide your, explain the sheet that we're going to link to.
Yeah, so there will be in the show notes a link to just a tip sheet to help you with some daily practices. So Ayurveda's got all sorts of ideas to keep you healthy. We could do herbs, we could do marma. I mean, there's so many different things but my favorite part is called Dinacharya, and it's daily practices. So it literally translates to daily rituals. But, you know, what do you do in every day to support your health and wellness? And this is like, we live this in our house. First, there was some resistance, but over time...
Were the cats resistant, or...
My partner was a little resistant.
I knew
The cats are all in. They love the Ayurvedic... No, they have no idea what's going on.
I'm just kidding.
No, but the daily practices of Ayurveda are literally the foundation of how I live my life. And I can't explain how beneficial they are. The easiest way to explain them is, how do you be as boring and reliable as possible, so that when your body and yourself, when you experience like stress or chaos or, you know, whatever, that your body and your mind and your emotion, you're ready to handle it. And so it impacts you less. I also like to think of it as, how do I be as boring and as routine as possible so that I can goof off when I really want to, so that I can get away with really ridiculous, stupid behavior. And that's a judgment on me, not on you people, on me. Like, is it really smart to eat an entire block of cheese? No, it is not. But because of Ayurveda, I know how to make that happen without any repercussions. Not every day.
Correct.
But I'm living the dream, people, because, you know, it's like, how do I know certain things affect my body and my mind and my emotions in certain ways, but I still like to do them. So how do I find a way to still do that?
Sure.
And remain healthy?
It's like setting yourself the foundation.
Yeah. So the daily practices, and you can see the link in the show notes, but basically it sets you up for a full day of support so that you can really thrive. And so the practices that I rely most on, and we could spend literally an hour talking about this, but we'll break it down to, Ayurveda wants you to go to bed and wake up around the same time, to create a reliable system of sleep for your body, because it turns out sleep's pretty freaking important. Science has shown that it helps us manage weight, manage emotions. We're more productive, we're more creative, we do better at our jobs, we're more successful, all because of getting not just quantity, but also quality sleep. And so Ayurveda wants us to ideally go to bed around 10, 10:30, 11, and wake up around like 5 or 6. And so we do that my friends know that I am not going out late. Like, I'm really in bed around 8 or 9 o'clock every night. I read. I really honor that time as something that is as important as it is. And since we started creating this reliable sleep routine in our house, it's been, oh my gosh, like 8 or 9 years now we've been doing this. Like, we get less sick. I don't get that lull in the afternoon at all anymore. I used to get it all the time. I find that I'm able to work much more effectively and longer. So there's a lot of benefits for that as well. So Ayurveda would want you to maintain that sleep. And then Ayurveda has all sorts of ideas about what you're supposed to do in the morning. Like, literally, it doesn't think you have a job because it was invented at a time when, like, you didn't have a job. And a lot of the people that taught me, like, their job is to teach. So they have like minions. They have people who do these things, like cook them these really healthy meals and give them, like, take care of all their stuff. So they don't have to drive their kids to like school or whatever, or like go to work. So I always take the daily practices with, what can I actually make happen in my life? So imagine you're up at like 5 a.m. and you got some time. So Ayurveda wants you to start off your day with some warm water and lemon to wake your digestive system up. Just like, I do not get up and like, hey, let's go. I'm so ready. Everything is possible. I wake up and I'm a little grumpy. I'm like, oh, really? Again? And so the warm water, the lemon helps me get my day going, but it also gets my digestive system going. It helps me have my very first bowel movement of the day. Ayurveda is very into having that out of the way first thing, a full complete evacuation. That will be the most that we talk about bowels today. We're just going to move right on from that.
But it's important.
But it's important because what goes in must come out. And ideally, you know, when we're talking about the real world, ideally that's not like in the middle of your day. Like, always,
you're
like
at work before a meeting.
At work. And who's in the stall next to you? It's like your boss or that person you really hate and you're having a situation. So ideally, all of that happens before you even leave the house. I know.
I have to share this side note funny story since we're going down the poop stories. My grandma would always, she could not in the morning, she would use a suppository, call it a little bullet of hope. I had to share that. I thought everyone would enjoy that story. My grandma has no shame, and she will just say what it is, and I love her for that.
Good for her.
Yes, because it's important.
Yeah, and as you get older, I suspect it's going to become more and more relevant in our daily life.
Yes.
Like, okay, so it's been a few days, and now it's a problem.
Yeah,
like, so
it is. It's one of the things I ask my clients all the time. Like, we talk about that.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, but so ideally, and if you need some tips on how to make that happen, feel free to email me.
Yes.
Ayurveda has many ideas about that. But anyway, so you're getting your digestive system going. And then it also, you know, all of my teachers are like, and then you will meditate and do pranayama for an hour, and then you will practice yoga for an hour. And it's like this long list of stuff starts to come out of them, and it's great. And I, like, when I have time, I'm doing yoga for an hour.
Yeah,
of course. But like, sometimes you have to like leave the home.
Sometimes you have an 8 a.m. meeting.
Yeah. Sometimes you have stuff that has to happen. You've got kids. You've got stuff. So so they would like all that to happen. But then we're going to talk a little bit about food and Ayurveda's perspective on really when to eat. It's amazing how when I first start working with clients, we work about lifestyle and we don't even touch diet. So it's like, yeah, you can keep eating what you're eating. That's great. We'll work on that later. But why don't we talk about when and how you're eating? And so Ayurveda is, first of all, wishy-washy about breakfast. If you feel like you need breakfast, great. If you feel like not, great. But check in with how you're actually feeling, right? Like, it wants you to be aware and be like, oh, hey, this is what I need today. So for instance, today I've got a day packed. So I was like, I'm not really feeling breakfast this morning, but I know that my day is packed. So I'm going to go ahead and eat it. But if my day hadn't been packed, I might not have had breakfast this morning. I might have been like, oh, you know, this is how I feel. Ayurveda wants your biggest meal of the day to be at lunch, which is different than how we tend to do it in the U.S. But since we've started doing that in our house, oh my gosh, the changes it's made. Again, that lull in the afternoon is gone. I have so much energy going into the rest of my day. And having that smaller meal at night, it's so funny. Like so just imagine switching the normal lunch portion. So like that soup and sandwich you might get at lunch, imagine having that in dinner at dinner instead. And then whatever you have, that bigger meal at dinner, imagine that at lunch. So you just kind of role reverse them. And what it's done for us at night, having that smaller meal for dinner, is now we have all this energy because we're not weighed down by the heaviness of that meal. And so we're like out doing stuff, we're going for walks, we're going to see movies, we're like out and about, and I'm like, this is so different. This is really nice. We're like really enjoying things. But it also, science says that will help you lose and manage weight. It'll help you sleep better. So there's lots of benefits. And the other thing that about meal timing that Ayurveda wants to offer is no snacking. Which can be challenging. Some days are better than others for me personally. And it's a hard habit to break. But once you do, it really strengthens your ability to digest things. So that giant block of cheese that I mentioned earlier, that would be a lunchtime experience when I had not been snacking. And so my digestion is much better able to handle my stupidity and my bad choices at lunchtime because my digestion's much stronger then. And so the no snacking thing also has this really interesting effect on enabling you to burn fat better. So we're so blessed in the West to have access to so much food, a lot of us. And so really we've trained our bodies that like anytime you want something, here it is. Like it really, like, oh, I could have a snack. I could go do this. And so whenever you're hungry, you can go do those things and fulfill that request from your body. But it's really not necessary for most. Now there are people who have health concerns, and I'm not talking about you. You've got your doctor's told you to do something, keep doing that. And there are people who are training for triathlons who really have to keep that energy coming in. But for most people, not snacking is a great way to really start to manage your health a little bit more effectively. But pretty much everything I've said, and there's certainly some more, but I know we're a little tight on time, so you can check out the sheet. But all these things that I've described are really me saying, how can I be boring? And how can I create a routine for my body? Because I'm eating at the same time every day, as much as possible. Some days it's not possible. When I'm traveling, it's not always, but I always have a plan. So like we're eating around 11:30, 12 every day for lunch. We're eating around 5 or 6 every night for dinner. And breakfast is always around like 7 if I have it. And my body knows that it's going to get food then. And so it's not complaining at like 10:30. It knows that lunch is coming. It's not complaining at like 3:30. It knows that dinner is coming and it's fine. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, you've set me up for these things, to expect these things. I don't get tired as much because it knows, oh, hey, at this time we're going to get to go to sleep. That's when I know I'm going to get my sleep. So I'm not worried about it. So how do you create this system that supports you? And some of these things might sound like, listen, lady, I'm not doing any of that. You want me to get up at like 5 or 6 a.m.? And that's fine. To each their own. But finding a routine that supports you, that's the daily practice, the daily rituals that support you, that, then you can build. And the only reason I'm living so much of it now is that I've slowly added them over time. I've taken time to be like, okay, and now I'll add this one. That one worked. This one didn't. I'm getting rid of this other one, this idea, and I'm adding in this new idea and trying that for a while. And so I'm still doing that. To this day, I'm still like, okay, so what's next? What else is possible? How else can I thrive? Because health is much more of a continuum than just like sick and not sick. It's like, what else besides not sick is possible? It's like, okay, really enjoying my life and finding more of the things that I love.
And two things out of that I really appreciate you sharing is that you don't have to do everything, all the Ayurvedic text, teachers, whatever you read, because we get consumed by things and then we find, oh, this other thing, Ayurveda, oh, I should be doing this. And then you're like, I don't have 3 hours every morning or 4 hours every morning. So knowing that, just starting with even the sleep and the eating, the meal times and whatever you can do in the morning, great. Adding stuff in, you know, year by year, maybe have a different intention or something like that. I know for me, when I have my routine, I feel so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of out of it right now after being sick. And I'm like, oh, I have to restart my routine because I do not feel good if I sleep in. I feel so much better if I wake up between 5 and 6 and go to bed by 10 and eat my meals at certain times. I know that because when I'm at my studio, I often, even though I have so much intention to eat at noon, sometimes that does not happen. And at 2 o'clock, I am hangry and I'm like, feed me or I will strangle someone. And I do not feel good about acting that way. And I'm sorry. And I will apologize again to everyone at my studio. If you see me at 2 o'clock, just feed me, please. And make me eat at noon so that doesn't even happen. But I feel so much better and I know these practices work. The other thing is just not necessarily focusing on what you're eating yet.
Yeah.
I think that's important because even when I work with my clients, people have such a relationship with their food.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's childhood nostalgic things tied to it. Maybe it's just sugar addiction. I don't, it can be all kinds of stuff. But that's always the biggest resistance is changing the diet. So to look at these other things, because when you're sleeping well, you stop craving stuff. When you're eating at certain meal times, the same thing. You don't crave as much. It doesn't mean you'll never crave something. And then there's getting the macronutrients and all those things. But it's sort of like if you look at these foundational things, which that's why I love Ayurveda, and I'm glad you shared that, then those other things may fall away, and then you end up losing weight or helping with whatever health issue because you're doing these foundational things, not because you're eating so much kale or whatnot. I think that's important.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that because it really is the small changes that are the hardest. It's hard to break a habit of wanting to sleep in. It's hard to break a habit of that afternoon snack. Those are hard things, and people are so hard on themselves when they don't accomplish these tasks, and they're big deals. But they really are the biggest bang for your buck when you're trying to make these healthy choices. So, and then when it comes to diet, the first place I start with clients is let's have some more vegetables. Yep, we're not even talking like hardcore this and not that. And one of the things I love and appreciate about Ayurveda is that it's not all or nothing. It's not a list of rules. It's here, try this stuff. See if it works for you. Keep what works and leave the rest. And the other thing I love about it is that it works slowly. So it takes time to see a difference. But what I appreciate so much about that is I know from my expertise in behavioral change and goal setting and all of that is the way that humans actually incorporate change is slowly. So if you're looking for a quick fix for something, Ayurveda is not for you. But if you're looking for a sustainable change, something that will support you throughout your life in living healthier in general, then yes, these practices are great because you add one. So like as you're thinking about the new year and you're like all these big changes you want to make, start with something small. What's something you could actually do this week? Like what is something small you could actually do this week? And it might even be as simple as like, I will eat lunch at noon on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Like that's a big deal, especially if you've been eating erratically. Setting yourself up for that, and what does that look like? How do you set yourself up for that success? It might be like, I really need some more time to ground and balance myself. Like I just, you were just mentioning how you're a little out of whack from being sick. So maybe it's I will go to yoga on Thursday morning at 8 a.m. That class I love at Embark Studios. Check them out.
We'll link to that too in the show notes.
Inadvertently link to that. A little self-promotion there. But no, like how do you start in a way that actually works for you instead of taking it all on? So New Year's resolutions typically don't work because people set goals for things that are completely unrealistic. One year I set a goal, and this is long before I knew all the stuff I know now, that said, I will go to the gym every day. Let me tell you, I did not even belong to a gym. Where did I think I was going? Like, I found it a couple years ago in one of my old notebooks, and I was like, what was I even thinking? Like, I didn't even belong to a gym. I don't like to go to the gym. I'm scared of all the machines. Like, they freak me out because I don't understand how to use them. I'm like, I can walk in a circle or on a treadmill. I'm good with that. But other than that, I'm pretty much useless there. So it was, yeah, it was a nice reality check. I was like, that was never going to happen. Like, and then I didn't set any goals that were behavior oriented. So I might say things like, in 2019, I'm going to take more time for myself. But what does that actually look like? Like, okay, well, like for me, that's practicing more yoga. That's really going to more yoga classes. Okay, so that's something I can put in my calendar. So as you approach some goals for 2019, I'd really invite you to consider what fits into your calendar. And how do you put it in your calendar? That's the next step, right? Like looking at your calendar, but then successfully putting it. Because once things are in my calendar, I'll actually do them.
Yes.
And they will happen.
I'm the same way. They have to be in my calendar. It can't be some idealistic thought of, oh, I might go there next week. No, I will forget about it. I will not make time for it. So you do have to put in your calendar and make it a priority. And also goes to making yourself a priority. I see that a lot. I talk to people a lot about that, is that sometimes there's not room in the calendar because all the priority has been on other people, other things. Yes. And I think make that daily self-care in Ayurveda and the goals and setting intentions for 2019 is maybe it's making yourself a priority.
Yeah.
That self-care that you talked about as well.
That's a great goal for 2000, because then it can be such a different manifestation for every person. So it could be for some of you like, okay, making myself a priority is getting sleep every night. Like, it sounds so simple, but it's such a powerful practice. Or, I will have that lunch at noon every day, no matter what, because I know what I'm like by 2:00 if I haven't eaten, and that's not who I want to be. That's not the person I want to show up as, and it doesn't end up serving me. So those are all things that are self-care. I mean, I feel like self-care gets a bad rap because it sounds so selfish, and really it's how you replenish yourself to take care of other people. Because I can't take care of anybody if I haven't taken care of myself.
Completely. It's like you can give more fully and be more present when your cup's full. Yeah. And you've taken care of yourself. Any final thoughts you want to share with everyone?
No, just I love talking about Ayurveda. If you have any questions about that or health coaching or any of the things that I offer, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope you found it beneficial, and I hope you enjoy the tip sheet, because those daily practices, they sound so simple, but they really make a big difference, at least in my life, and many of my clients have found them beneficial as well. So
I completely agree. I do an Abhyanga, the self-massage practice, and I change the herbal infused oils depending on the season, and I felt that for me, that I try to get my meditation and yoga in, not an hour practice every morning, more like 10 to 20 minutes of each, if I wake up early enough. But having those practices really make a difference for me. Yeah. So I'm glad that you were on today, shared all of your knowledge, and we'll link to your website in the show notes, and of course have that freebie download so everybody could start with their daily routine. Yeah. So I really appreciate you being on, Ellen, and sharing your knowledge. You're full of knowledge. So if anybody wants to get to know Ellen more, we'll link to her website and link to that freebie we talked about, and so you can start your daily routine, and then you can reach out to her and learn more. So I want to encourage everyone, if you're enjoying the Wild Wisdom podcast, be sure to go to our show on page on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you're listening and rate us and write a review. That enables us to share this podcast with more people. And we will be back on Thursday with another episode. So tune in then, and wild blessings.